Hello, I'm Wendy Weiger, and welcome to Word from the Woods. I'm speaking to you from my off-grid cabin deep in the Maine Woods in January, and I'm going to talk to you about what it's like to make it through the winter alone without running water or indoor plumbing. Not necessarily what you think of when you think of wilderness adventure, but it is a key aspect of my life here. So come along, we'll get started. This is where I get my water. This is a pump sitting on top of a well. The well is 300 feet deep. It was about 100 feet down to bedrock, and then the pipe goes 200 feet down below that. My mother Deanie and I had the water tested. It is safe for drinking. The well is about 300 feet from the cabin. I would have liked to have had it closer. However, the well drilling equipment is very heavy, and the man who came to drill the well said the ground was too soft to get that heavy equipment as close to the cabin as I wanted. So I try to think of it as an opportunity for upper body exercise, hauling the pails of water back to the cabin when I'm done pumping. Now, this pump is very special. It's made by Bison Pumps, a company that originated in Houlton, Maine. Since then, the company has moved south. But what's special about the pump is that when I'm done pumping, the water drops back below the frost line. And that means the pump never freezes, no matter how cold it gets. Even at 25 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, and I have tested it at about that temperature, just a few strokes and I get liquid water flowing out through the pump. So I collect the water in these stainless steel pails. These are pails designed to be used by the Amish for hand milking. They come from Lehman's in Ohio. Lehman's bills itself as a low-tech superstore. And what I realized when I was thinking about how I was going to transport water to my cabin after pumping it, most pails that you can buy today at a hardware store aren't really safe for transporting or storing drinking water. They are plastics that aren't necessarily food safe. They are metal buckets that are used for mopping floors and that may have lead solder. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do and was very happy to find these food safe pails designed for milk online. One of the pails is about 4 gallons, the other is about 3 gallons. I can't fill them up quite to the top. So as full as I can fill them, I have maybe a total of 6 gallons of water. That's 48 pounds plus the weight of the pail. So I'm carrying about 50 pounds when the buckets are as full as I get them. So here we go. I'll show you how it works. I generally rinse out the bucket and fill it up. So that's my 3 gallon pail. And this is the 4 gallon pail. It takes over 50 strokes to fill the 2 buckets. So I am getting a lot of upper body exercise. So to get 6 gallons of water back to the cabin, I am walking to the pump. I am pumping over 50 strokes and then carrying the 2 pails, which total about 50 pounds, back to the cabin. And to fill up all my water containers, which I'll be showing you soon, takes a couple of trips back and forth. So, and this is something I have to do on an almost daily basis. So I get a lot of exercise just supplying myself with water. And here we go, ready to head back to the cabin. The two buckets kind of balance each other, which makes it a bit easier. It's actually, despite the extra weight, it's easier to carry the two buckets at once than to carry them separately. This is how I store my water. You see my kitchen area here, and in particular, the two stainless steel milking pails that I use to carry water from the pump. I have on my propane cook stove here, I have a large pot, and I have a tea kettle. And then this is my sink. And you see there's an urn here, and it gives me a semblance of running water. This is a real luxury in an off-grid cabin in the Maine woods. And here is another bit of a luxury. You see my sink. My sink has a drain, and in general, sink drains in off-grid cabins in the Maine woods do not work when it is below freezing because the pipes freeze. But I wanted a sink drain that would work all winter and asked the man who built the cabin about it, and he asked around, and he found that by eliminating the usual U-shaped trap in the pipe under the sink, that water could just flow directly out to the gray water chambers that are buried in the ground just behind my cabin all winter without accumulating any water that would freeze. So I was delighted actually with that solution. The drawback is that that U-shaped trap does prevent some gases from the dirty water. There are bits of food in it that are decomposing. Some of those gases would be prevented from entering the cabin by the U-shaped trap. It's not that big a deal, really. I get an occasional slight odor, and I accept it as a trade-off for having a working drain for what's supposed to be all the winter. Now, in the winter of 2022, it was another story. We had prolonged, very cold weather down to nearly 30 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. And what happened was there wasn't a whole lot of snow cover on the ground either. And the ground froze deeply, and my gray water system froze solid. So water started backing up into the sink. And when I mentioned it online to my social media followers, I got all kinds of suggestions to put all kinds of things down the drain to solve the problem. Boiling water, salt, even molasses. The problem was it wasn't just the pipe that was frozen, it was the entire system. And I had to wait about 2.5 months for the ground to thaw in the spring before I could use my sink drain again. So at first I was pretty dismayed, but I did what most people would be doing who didn't have drains that were supposed to work all winter. I put a pot in the sink. Some people disconnect the pipe under the sink and put the pot under the sink, but I couldn't easily disconnect my pipe. And so what I did was simply put a big pot in the sink, used it to collect wastewater, and when it was full, I carried it out by hand. I surely grumbled about it at the beginning, but it became just a part of my ordinary everyday routine before long. And this is how I fill my urn to get my running water. I take one of the stainless steel milking pails and I carry it here and pour it in. Now this is the smaller of the two pails. When I fill it as far as it's safe for me to carry it so that it doesn't splash out, this is a 3-gallon pail. I'm filling it up to maybe about 2.5 gallons. So that's about 20 pounds of water. And again, this adds to my upper body workout to lift up this pail here. And when it's full, 20 pounds heavy, to control it as it pours into the urn. I think this is a pretty good exercise machine. So I've got my own backwoods gym built into just my activities of daily living, which is how people traditionally did get their exercise. No gym membership required. In the absence of indoor plumbing, I use an outhouse, and here it is. When my mother, Deanie, realized that we would need an outhouse, she said fine, but it had to be as nice as we could make it. And I'm going to show you a little bit of our outhouse decor. Of course, the most prominent feature is the throne, so to speak. The thing next to it, tucked in the corner there, is a spare suitcase generator. I don't have another outbuilding, so this doubles as a storage shed here. The suitcase generator generates power for my satellite dish, which provides internet. I use it to charge my laptop, my phone, a couple of other small devices, such as the satellite tracking device that I can use to call for help in case of emergency. But other than that, I don't use electricity. Now, the throne, you can see the toilet seat is made of wood. And that's very important when you're out here at cold temperatures. I've used this down to 25 below 0 Fahrenheit, pretty cold for exposed skin. And you want the material that you're sitting on to be as comfortable as possible. Wood isn't too bad. People who have toilet seats in their outhouses made of other materials sometimes have a ring of styrofoam that they can put between themselves and the toilet seat to make it more tolerable. This toilet sits over a closed tank, which will eventually need to be pumped. It takes a long time with just me using it. I like to joke I'm not too full of you-know-what. And a friend of ours made beautiful curtains for our windows. The outhouse has a nice view. And even better than that, in the spring and summer, I can do birding by ear while I'm sitting here. I once enjoyed a beautiful serenade from a ruby-crowned kinglet while I was sitting on the throne. Today is laundry day, and spoiler alert, it takes a lot more work than it would in town. I am using this vat that was originally intended for canning as my laundry tub. I've got some cold water in it, and I'm going to pour water that I'm heating on the stove in the tea kettle into the colder water to come up with warm water for washing. And this is going to be my agitator. I will be using eco-sensitive dish soap in here to wash the clothes. All right, so I'm going to squirt some soap in here. Whoop, that sound there in the background is indicating that my tea kettle is boiling. So I'm going to bring the water over and pour it in. So I have a warm water wash here. All right, so here we go. Adding warm water for washing. Well, boiling water, which combined with the cold water will average out to warm. I'm going to be making multiple trips back and forth to the pump to get this laundry done. Given all the work it takes to do laundry. I don't change my clothes as often as I would in town. I do change my socks and underpants every day. Hope that's not too much information. But the larger garments I wear for multiple days and air them out at night. I keep a dedicated set of sleeping clothes that I wear only in bed in an attempt to keep my sheets clean, because I can't really wash sheets in here either. To wash the sheets, I would have to haul them out on my gear sled to wash them in a washing machine in town. Now, when you think of, say, a pioneer family or really just the average family a few hundred years back, imagine a mother with 6 kids to care for and having to do laundry like this. Granted, she probably would have had a much larger wash tub that might have allowed her to do bedding, at least occasionally. But you can see why standards of cleanliness were different back then. It just wasn't possible or practical to wash clothes that often. It's hard enough just for me, for one person. If I think of myself, say, as a 30-something woman on the frontier in, 1850s, 1860s with 6 kids, I probably would have been pregnant myself at the time, and would have probably had a baby and maybe a toddler also in diapers. A lot of work to do all that laundry. I sort my clothes into piles, and I'm not going to be able to refill this urn with soapy water too many times, again, just because of the work involved. So I wash the less dirty clothes first when the water is cleanest, and then progress to things that are dirtier. As I mentioned, I'll use this wooden spoon as an agitator. I will also be just washing things by hand, kind of kneading them. It does get a little messy. I'm going to get some water on the floor. It's just a basic wood floor without any fancy finish, and it will just absorb the water. So this is cabin life. This is not a palace that needs to be kept pristine. All right, so I've agitated, I've kneaded. I'm going to squeeze out as much water as I can easily squeeze and set this aside. I get all of my laundry soaked up, and then we'll do all the rinsing at once. I'll dump this soapy water. I will refill with fresh water for rinsing. So I'll set this aside for now. All right, I've soaked everything up and set it aside. Now it's time to dump the soapy water, and again, heavy, lots of upper body exercise. While I was washing the clothes, I have a lot of time to think. These chores that are so labor intensive can be pretty meditative. So I was thinking more about the frontier woman and thinking, yeah, this is hard for me, but she would have had a harder job doing laundry than I do. She wouldn't have had a nice, easy pump to pump water from when it's cold. She would have been getting water from just a well that you had to dip a bucket into if she was lucky, or maybe from a creek or lake. It could have been pretty far away. And she wouldn't have had a propane range like I have to heat up my water. She would have had an open fireplace, maybe a wood stove. So it just staggers me to think of the work that the frontier women did, caring for their large families. Okay, time to rinse. I've heated this water on my propane range. Here it goes. And I have filled the pot once again to heat it up for the next round of rinsing. I will do several changes of water on the rinse. So I'm going to get some of the soapy clothes that I've set aside and rinse them. Again, my wooden spoon agitator. I am getting water on the floor. Wring out the clothes as well as I can. This actually gives a lot of exercise for my hands. My hands get tired doing this. And here is how I dry my laundry once it's been washed and rinsed. I have a cord that I string from one wall to the other of the cabin. I use metal loops that screw into the wall. It's parachute cord. I tie it in place with a trucker's hitch, a great all-purpose knot. If you don't know it, I'm sure you can find out how to do it online. Use it for a lot of things. And so I only have the cord in place when I need it to dry my laundry. And here we go. This is my standard uniform, as my mother Deanie used to call it in the winter. Merino wool. Keeps you warm even when it gets soaking wet in cold rain or if you break through an icy pond. Keeps you from getting hypothermia, so it literally is a lifesaver. And I have my leggings and I have my top. So here it all is at long last, washed, rinsed, and hung to dry. It took me a few hours to get this done. Took several trips to the pump, 2 beforehand, 2 during, and there's going to be 1 or 2 after, so that makes 5 or 6 trips to the pump. What didn't fit on the line here, I have on a drying rack or on hangers hanging from my closet door. I get nice dry heat from my wood stove. Nice dry heat, not always good for my nose, but good for drying clothes. Still, I can't wring as much water out as I would get out with a spin dry cycle in a conventional washer, so this will probably take overnight to dry. But I'm just grateful that I have a system that works. I don't do laundry that often. I'll let it go for 2 weeks if I can get by, because it takes a lot of time to prep, to set it up, to do it, and then to clean up afterwards. It's more time efficient to do more at once if I can. So these are my adventures in laundry, off-grid in the Maine woods. And I hope you will stay tuned for the next video where I will talk more about my off-grid life here. Until then, stay well, stay warm, and enjoy the winter.